If you listen to Kanye West's new album, Donda, one of the most impactful moments is an impassioned address by Larry Hoover Jr. about his father, Larry Hoover Sr. Now, if you don't know who Larry Hoover is, you might remember his name from one of the hardest hooks of 2010 when Rick Ross bragged, "I think I'm Big Meech, Larry Hoover. I'm blowing money fast." And man, that track went in the club, but I digress. So what's the deal with Larry Hoover? Why is he in prison and why hasn't he been released? Well, let's dive into it. My name is Jamahl Kersey and I'm a criminal defense attorney in San Diego, California. And in this video, we're talking Larry Hoover, Kim and Kanye's trips to the White House, and federal criminal reform. Larry Hoover Sr. is famously known as the founder of the Chicago street gang known as the Gangster Disciples. In 1973, Larry Hoover was sentenced to 150 to 200 years for ordering the murder of William Pookie Young, who had apparently stolen money and drugs from Hoover's gang. While in prison, Hoover was said to have run his gang's drug trade both behind the prison walls and on the streets. His reach started in Chicago and eventually expanded to other states. In early 1993, after 20 years of being locked down, Hoover claimed his criminal past was behind him and became a man of urban political influence in Chicago. Hoover's Gangster Disciples had began organizing community cleanups, charity events, and peaceful protests against the closing of public programs. One of his attorneys stated, Hoover saw the death, the destruction, the prisons filling up with young people. He wanted to move the Gangster Disciples into something constructive. Hoover announced that the initials GD had changed to mean growth and development. Growth and development created nonprofit organizations that registered voters, supplied food to the needy, ran a music label that helped underprivileged children, and even created a clothing line. Hoover gained community support from his positive impact on the community. Friends and allies lobbied to get Hoover paroled for his contributions to society. Meanwhile, the feds had been investigating Hoover. In fact, the investigation went on for years. One of the agents' tactics was placing recording devices on the visitors' badges of associates who went to see Hoover. Based on evidence from recorded conversations, Hoover was indicted for drug conspiracy, extortion, and running Gangster Disciples from prison. This was no small organization. Prosecutors alleged the Gangster Disciples had grown to over 30,000 members and generated $100 million a year. Informants reported that Hoover's nonprofit organizations were fronts for laundering drug money. Gangster Disciple members testified that none of the proceeds for any of the so-called charities actually went to helping anyone in need. Hoover went to trial in this case. He was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 6 life sentences. Criminal justice reform was on the minds of advocates for years. The election of Donald Trump, who took a tough on crime stance and called himself the law and order candidate, gave little hope that any deal could be done. Nonetheless, you had Black Lives Matter activists and Tea Party conservatives alike pushing for reform. It's said that the real turning point came when Kim Kardashian West had a meeting with President Trump regarding Alice Johnson, a woman who was sentenced to life in prison without parole for a non-violent drug trafficking case. Under the Constitution, the president has the authority to commute or reduce sentences for federal criminal convictions. Commutation is usually earned based on good behavior and reformation. Just a month after meeting with Kardashian West, President Trump commuted Ms. Johnson's sentence. Months of bipartisan advocacy followed, leading to Trump publicly supporting the reform bill, saying it included reasonable sentencing reforms while keeping dangerous and violent criminals off of our streets. President Trump eventually signed the First Step Act into law. The law would go on to reduce sentences for crack cocaine-related convictions. Thousands of federal prisoners would see earlier releases. It would also set up programs designed to help the formerly incarcerated adapt to life after prison. The law would give judges more discretion in sentencing decisions, amongst other benefits. So really, it was a step in the right direction. Kanye West also met with President Trump. He talked about a number of issues during the conversation, including his request for the president to commute Larry Hoover's sentence. In his plea, he said the reason why the feds went after Hoover is because he started doing positive things in the community, which is a position taken by many of Hoover's supporters. Kanye felt an obligation to free Hoover because of the positive things he was doing in Chicago. President Trump did not commute Hoover's sentence, but by signing the First Step Act, Hoover was given an opportunity to make a request for a new sentencing hearing. Hoover's lawyers filed the paperwork in hopes that he would soon be released from federal custody. Any such decision would be at the discretion of the court. In July of this year, a U.S. district judge denied his request, saying Hoover is one of the most notorious criminals in Illinois history, and he'd be concerned about an active risk of harm if Hoover were freed. This was devastating news for Hoover, his legal team, and his family. And so, closing out the track on Kanye's Jesus Lord, we hear Larry Hoover Jr. thanking Kanye for his efforts. It was obviously a big deal for Kanye to go to the White House to advocate for his father. He describes feeling like with his father in prison, he and his whole family have been incarcerated, even though they've never been to jail. He notes that the conditions of this capitalist society are what made his father, but said his father is nonetheless a beacon of hope for the community before finally pleading, "Free my father, Mr. Larry Hoover Sr." As a black man who grew up in the neighborhood and now a defense attorney, I understand firsthand the conditions that lead so many young black men astray. Oftentimes the trap seems unavoidable, and my heart goes out to all the families who lost sons in the struggle. Well, we've reached the end. I hope you found this video informative. If you liked it, please hit the like button and be sure to subscribe to this channel. Also, if you have any ideas for things you'd like for me to talk about in future videos, be sure to leave me a comment below. Well, that's it. Until next time. Peace.